Hey everyone, welcome to Informed Dissent, a news podcast that brings you dispatches from the gender culture war. I am the gay, not queer writer Ben Appel. Also, my book's coming out November 4th, Cis White Gay. Um, and I'm here with my co-hosts, author and needle felter Lisa Sellen Davis, gender clinic whistleblower and co-executive director of LGBT Courage Coalition, Jamie Reed, and the disenchanted transsexual Corey Cohn, and the always insightful writer and researcher Eliza Mondegreen. Sorry, I read everything out of order. Um, what were we just talking about? We were talking about hair and the Mormon MAGA beauty aesthetic, I think.
Yeah,
Yes,
Jamie decided to throw a grenade right before we started recording.
I did. And I'm going to throw one other one, which is that I have no power in my house.
Okay,
It just went out, and I am joining you by candlelight as my lighting. And I'm throwing a hotspot to my well-charged computer. So that's why this looks a little weird. I'm not performing a seance.
got it.
Yeah,
Okay, but it was because of the lighting that I remembered that there was this really interesting New York Times article this week that was really taking apart the aesthetic of women who are MAGA, apparently. And I was just pointing out that I thought that Eliza and Lisa and I had some form of the Mormon hair that they talked about, and I was told that I was wrong.
Wait, is it
Yeah.
Mormon hair?
Apparently, this hair comes from Mormon momfluencers.
I see.
And and I think we all lovingly pointed out that we know some very amazing women who have that hair,
hmm
including January. Um,
It's not name.
no. She, she knows that I look up to her hair. But
Very
but
good hair.
very good hair. But apparently it's different than our hair because our hair is naturally fluff ball curly when it is
hmm
humid outside.
It's like
Yeah,
it,
the MAGA hair is not like that's like very done hair and not like you air dried your hair and you have kind of curly hair. So I don't, yeah.
Okay.
the MAGA
Yeah,
look.
they probably have straight hair that they spent 45 minutes blow drying with multiple products and then used a curling iron, which has happened
Like,
to me twice in my life when during like public appearances where someone did that to me. I'm very quite happy for the people who are listening. Actually, my hair is 47,000 different colors because I tried to cover my gray, which is about 70% of my hair, with washout hair dye, but it didn't wash out. So there's a lot of stuff going on with my hair, and when it rains, I have terrific hair, according to me. But it's hippie hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
my
But
power
MAGA
came
hair.
back on.
All
hair,
right.
yes, amazing.
Now you can blow dry your
I can blow out all the candles.
curl it. No, MAGA hair, but I think it is interesting that there is a very common beauty standard among the Trump women.
Yeah, it's the MAGA look is you know it when you see it. You know, it's hard to describe, but you know it when you see it. It's like
It's like
porn.
obscenity. Yeah.
But or also they get professional blowouts. You were saying that they spend 45 minutes drawing, but they also get blowouts and
Oh,
and then a lot of times women, well, being a former hairstylist myself, who is the
right.
sole expert on this topic on this
Yes.
panel. Thank you very much. Not that you guys aren't experts because what do
No,
women do
I
besides
need
play with their
tips.
hair all day? So you actually are the real experts because women, that's all women do is just talk
That's
about
right.
hair and play with hair. But a lot of women will not, certainly not wash their hair every day, maybe once a week, a couple times a
Oh
week.
my.
So you can kind of just restyle it and smooth it out with a curling iron and a little bit of product if you're, going out again. It's good for the hair.
Well,
Thank
you should do a some kind of contest around your book, some kind of publicity where
you. Oh,
somebody wins a
a
haircut
haircut?
from you.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
My God, that would be insane. That would be so funny.
You should do it.
By the
We,
way, we've been friends
Actually,
for multiple
actually,
years now, and Ben has never given me any hair help. So I'm feeling
yeah, Ben, you've never helped my hair.
well, hey, what if that's a compliment? What if I'm communicating you need no help?
I mean, have you ever
That's
staged a hair intervention with anybody?
No, not recently.
Okay, then it doesn't mean a whole lot.
But I only do my husband's hair now.
Silence.
The only hair I cut is my husband's hair now. I do miss it every
Right.
once in a while, but it's almost like when I put down that side of those scissors, it was like I had retired that part of it.
The,
I
the,
like talking about it, but um,
okay. There's an actual real hair problem um in our world a little bit. So
okay,
I
go.
believe Kate Herzog has once said that she was thrown out of a appointment. Um, in my own world, we are struggling to find someone who will give a lesbian a haircut that uh for the lesbian who is uh not who is gender critical.
they don't have barber shops in St. Louis.
Yeah.
So Ben, you probably are aware of this. If you want a real good lesbian short haircut, you need to go to somebody who knows how to do that.
what's the difference between a lesbian short haircut and a short haircut?
I just want to say we were worried we weren't going to have anything to talk about this week, and it's not a problem.
Am I making this up, Ben? I have
No,
known a couple lesbians who've been totally thrown out of the place to get their haircut because they're not rah-rah trans.
I did not know that was happening. But look, I stopped being a hairstylist back in 2016, and I was still
Oh,
so this was a different time. This was a past life. This
yeah.
was like prehistoric era. So I was not familiar with people getting thrown out for that.
Okay, Corey, can I ask you, do you have a good place to get your haircut that you feel comfortable with?
Yeah, my hairstylist, who I'm pretty happy with, is a woman who identifies as non-binary, and we talk about all of the problems that we talk about here. We talk about in a slightly more gentile or a genteel way. She's not Jewish either. She's not Jewish, so it's we talk about gentile way as well. No, we not as on the nose as we talk about it, but we talk about a lot of the problems with the kids who are being overdiagnosed and the cultural problems and all that sort of stuff. And then she does my hair.
Do you,
But not while she's wielding the scissors, because that
Oh
seems
yeah,
risky.
oh yeah.
oh,
Okay.
maybe Indiana is where it's at. Y'all can have the hard conversations without throwing people out of the barbershop chair.
I don't know. I can.
You're very good at it,
I
though.
mean,
Yeah.
that's Corey's magic. You know, this morning I was at my exercise class. It was 6:15. I I was up a lot of the night with just various kinds of pain, and but I was already up, so I went to my class, and I've been gone for 2 weeks, and I haven't really had to interact with the people in my blue bubble. And we all went around and said something kind of like we do at the end of this. Everyone said something they're watching or reading, etc. And I said that I was reading this book, The Psychology of Totalitarianism. And I also told the story of reading it on, I took the subway back from JFK yesterday, and I'm reading it on the train. And it's this very heady, interesting book, but it really was inspired by COVID, even though it's going back to the Romans and the Greeks and talking about how easy it is for societies to turn into totalitarian states. Anyway, and then there's just a dude on the subway that it was unclear, you know, whether he could be officially classified as crazy or not, but playing very loud, deeply kind of offensive rap music and saying a bunch of stuff, just going on and on about these damn bitches. And I'm like reading my book, and I just was having the funniest time. So I was mostly telling this story about just being back in New York and navigating that. And the woman next to me said, didn't hear much of my story because she was so focused on, you're saying that the book is inspired by Democrats and COVID? That's hilarious. Like, she could not believe, she said, I work in health, and I in the health industry, I don't know what you're talking about. And we were jogging around the bases on the baseball diamond, and I was like running really fast because I just thought, like, I don't even know how, I can't be Corey right now. I said, read David Zweig's new book, An Abundance of Caution, and then we'll talk, because there's no reason for us to talk. And I ran away. Corey, what would you have done in that situation? And maybe you wouldn't have brought it up that way anyway, knowing that the reception wouldn't have been good. But had you said, oh, they're going around, other people are saying what TV show they're watching or whatever, and then you're reading the psychology, how would you have put it? And then when someone reacted that way, what would you have said?
I would say, well, I'm not completely confident in my thinking around these things, so I try to get other points of view so that I can work out what's happening better.
But but what would you have? Oh, so you would have just said, like, well, I'm just I'm opening my stores of knowledge.
Yeah, I'm not confident that I know everything about this topic. And so there's this well-reviewed book that seemed interesting, and I want to get more perspectives.
Oh, that's actually smart. Being like, I hadn't thought about this. Like, so it's still kind of saying, I'm on your side, and I have always thought, well, no. It's saying, like, well, you're right. You're not saying that, but someone could interpret it that way who is listening. Like, oh, if you're saying, oh, I've actually been looking at more viewpoints, I've been really curious. I've been hearing people talk about this, and I've been understanding it. Actually, there's some stuff out there that kind of I didn't realize, so it's more curious and more, hey, why won't you be curious with me, rather than being preachy? Is that what you're saying? In a way?
Well, you filled in some of the subtext. Everyone will do that on their own, but I'm also genuine, which is I like to. All of us do. Like, hey, there's something in here that will help me understand the world better. Whoever has written this has a point of view or a perspective that I either only know at the surface and would like to understand more deeply, or I'm open to being surprised. And maybe when I'm done with this, I'll come away with a little treasure that I didn't have going into it, and that'll help me be able to reckon with what's happening better. My understanding will develop. But then you present it as, this is what I'm doing. ... What do you think about that?
So what you're saying is there's another way to talk to, like, let's say parents of trans kids besides saying, like, you're chemically and surgically mutilating your children. Are you saying that there is something else that can be said besides that?
How about some people say that you are chemically and surgically mutilating your children?
It has been said.
I have a privileged position to suspect that you may be. Yeah.
I'm going to acknowledge my privilege here.
I'm just as sort of paralyzed and I don't know if offensive, aggressive, stubborn in the face of certainty, no matter where it's coming from. And then I end up seeming exactly the same. So I may have been at a liberal ladies gathering this morning doing leg lifts, but a few days before, I was across the country at what was billed as a turf meetup. I was just, I should have left. I saw someone in the parking lot that is one of the only people in the whole world I don't ever want to have a conversation with. But I said I went anyway. It was so stupid. And it was just like a certainty festival of anyone who gets these surgeries is mentally ill. And anyone who ever uses preferred pronouns is wrong and bad. And they're just like rattling off this stuff. And I was just like, I don't have any other than like trying to soothe myself, which I'm not good at, but which is something I really need to work on. I couldn't figure out what I was getting out of being there because it also the joke there were no good jokes and there were no snacks and it was raining.
There's no snacks?
No snacks, no jokes, no good Los Angeles weather. So
Okay.
You went to a turf meetup and there wasn't even carob trail mix available.
Banana chips. I've been on a banana chip.
no snacks and just like just the outrage and I texted you guys that I have outrage fatigue, but I'm fatigued by my own outrage too.
I get it.
Okay, before I pivot us, were there actually any news items this week?
Oh, yes, there are some news headlines. Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Jamie.
You want to? It was Eliza's cat's butt that reminded me.
That beautiful, beautiful, beautiful creature.
Right. Back to the cat ass.
Yes,
Okay, what was the news?
there have been some headlines, and also if you want a more thorough and comprehensive breakdown, we have a weekly newsletter that we release for paid subscribers every Friday. So if you would like, please subscribe to that. Let's see. Where am I here? Loudoun County, Virginia. I write a little more about this in the newsletter. But the school board is investigating 3 high school boys. I think they might all be age 15 for a possible Title IX violation. Now it sounds like they've done something horrible, but what they did was they were video recorded in the boys' locker room by a trans-identified female student who overheard them talking about how uncomfortable they were with having girls in the boys' locker room. And so the school policy is, prohibits video and audio recording in locker rooms, but it's the boys who are being investigated for a Title IX violation, specifically sexual harassment. Hmm. Yeah, but I go into this in the newsletter, but Loudoun County is just a disaster, just an absolute. And it's interesting. There's a lot going on here because one of the boys' father is apparently a Muslim immigrant. ABC7 had interviewed him. I think it was ABC7 interviewed him and just talking about this. So there's a lot of things going on in one story, but we'll keep people up to date on that. And Fox News is reporting a trans-identifying athlete who competed for North Yarmouth Academy in Yarmouth, Maine. So Maine, hotspot for this controversy, has won the girls' 800 meter and 1600 meter events. And this is not the first time this athlete has made headlines. This is maybe a month after jumping, it says, to 4th place in the 5K division in the girls category after previously finishing 172 among the boys. And then this person also competed in Nordic skiing, and they took a podium spot in Maine's high school Nordic skiing championships this past February. Also, on the topic of Maine, the Advocate's reporting and other people are reporting as well, but I got this from the Advocate. Maine Governor Janet Mills was able to get state funds restored. The USDA unfroze the funds. A federal judge had ruled last month that the agency had likely failed to follow legal procedure. So rather than risk a broader injunction, the USDA folded. So she did see Trump in court, and she won there. And then SCOTUS has upheld Trump's trans military ban. So that's big news there, and I think it's still unfolding. Um, for more info about that, there's plenty of news circulating, and I'm sure a lot of people have read or heard about it.
I have a very interesting connection to Maine right now. So there was a hearing that was supposed to be yesterday in Maine on 5, maybe 6 bills The only bill that was my main focus was LD 380
Main
in
focus.
Maine. What's that?
Main focus. Sorry.
Oh, yes. LD 380, which is because in the state of Maine, a minor can consent to puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones without the need for you don't need parental consent to consent.
At what age?
Whatever age you get to start consenting for psych drugs, which apparently minors can also do on their own, inpatient psych treatments, and birth control, and drug treatment, and alcohol treatment. So they just tied trans interventions with those. So we attempted to testify, and I say attempted because the hearings began at 9 a.m. and they, at midnight, while I was on the Zoom still, midnight Maine time, they randomly said out of nowhere, we have a hard stop at midnight because the people have to leave the building and you all are cut off and you don't get to speak. So then we were offered a new chance to speak this morning at 10 a.m., but only those who were still actively on the Zoom all the way up until midnight.
What? Okay.
So yeah, Maine was hard.
That's
And
dirty. That's
yeah.
dirty.
Also, NPR wrote their story about the day's hearings and put it out at 3 p.m. while we were all still waiting on the Zoom to speak. So apparently they thought nobody was in opposition or was in support.
Unreal. So
They can see the future. This is makes them very competitive in the news business.
well, anything that happens after that is irrelevant to the story.
Yeah.
Yes, they got their
Right.
pictures.
When you know the story before you report it, then why bother waiting for events to unfold?
It makes your
Well,
job super easy, right?
When we get off of this, I will be emailing all of those journalists to let them know, hey, just FYI, the cool story that you could have reported on is that for the first time in Maine, they decided to cut off testimony at a hard stop when all of the other legislators were like, we've never heard of this before, and have gone all the way until everyone was done. That was the actual story.
Oh, really? That they've always done that
Yep,
before?
they've always let it go on. And apparently, even one of the reps on the committee kept saying, I don't even agree with the people that you're cutting off, but it is not our policy to cut people off. We go until all of the public speakers have been heard. But
Maine needs to be put on blast for this. We need to put Maine on blast. Was this the House or the Senate? I'm sorry. Or was this a committee?
This was the committee.
A committee, okay.
Yes.
Is there again, I'm just wondering, because different states have different types of cultures in their legislatures. Is this a common occurrence in Maine? Does this happen 3 or 4 or 5 times a session? Is this the very first time?
Corey, did you just pass out for the past 2.5 minutes? We literally just said that conversation. No, this has not occurred in Maine ever.
As far as we know,
how do we know?
Well, that's
because
Jamie.
The rep even said, when did this policy come into place? We've always heard the people till the end.
Okay, I guess I did pass out. I was thinking about
It's okay.
You were somewhere else.
No, I wasn't. I was thinking about the mechanics of
But anytime you've ever testified, do they not go until it's done?
Well, no. There's been times where they've had to cut off testimony.
I think in Colorado they just cut off testimony as well.
Yeah, it's not necessarily been my experience when I'm testifying, but in other cases of other sorts of bills in other states, limiting public testimony isn't that strange. So what would be more surprising is if the chairperson stacked all of the testimony. So we're going to do all the proponent testimony first, and then we're not going to hear any opponent testimony. So usually there's a way to try to, like what we did in New Hampshire when there were so many people. They alternated pro and con so that there's some fairness. Sometimes there are people who come to give, are witnesses to give testimony that the chair and the minority, what's the position called? The minority
Whip?
leader on not the whip, the person on the committee who's the lead minority representative, but they'll talk ahead of time and they'll say, here, these are the witnesses that I absolutely need to come up, and they accommodate each other because it's sort of give and take. And but I'm sorry if I was passed out. I was just contemplating. Was there no opposite testimony on this? Was it just completely stacked one-sided?
They cut off all of the testimony on Bill LD 380 after they only heard from those in opposition. So yes, it was stacked.
It was completely stacked. Then that's bizarre.
Basically, yes.
It
The other thing
reminds-
that sorry, I just want to share this one thing because it was slightly bizarre. The other thing that happened, and it was very late for me. I don't normally stay up late, so I could be like partially like delusional here. There was a kind of intimidating looking punk guy in the audience with this giant neck tattoo. I was virtual, so I'm watching him with this giant neck tattoo, and his head was shaved. And he had a tattoo on the side of his face, and like be total punk. And was sitting in the audience, and then there was a woman sitting next to him, and they were like holding hands, and they were being all cutesy or whatever. And then the scary punk got up to testify and introduced themselves as a trans, feminine, lesbian, leather dyke.
Cool.
And I have
what got her number?
what is happening? What is happening?
This has been going on for a while.
So is that person trolling, or is that just a completely 100% male looking person just identifying as lesbian, or is it a female who transitioned? And
no, this is a male. The only I don't know. The only I was like, wow, that I'm from the punk world too. So I'm like, oh, punks. I like punks, but I was like, that's a scary punk. Like they look like they would hurt people. But to be a trans feminine identified lesbian leather dyke? What?
Does not seem very punk. I mean, just having the kind of a bespoke gender identity doesn't seem very punk to me, but it's not.
But then you're
punk.
not anymore.
By the way, I don't know if this will win, but I hope we consider that as the episode title.
That's a good one.
Leather.
I mean, Jamie, did that bother you being a lesbian and just hearing a man call himself a dyke?
Yes.
Yeah, I get that.
That was that part of that was the part where I was like, wait, what just happened? And then but then he's straight. He's a straight man.
Right. Yeah, it's just awful. It feels terrible. I mean, it's like when you're a gay person and you hear, like when I hear women talking about, oh, I'm a fag, and I've read articles and academic literature and that incorporates this, where it's like women are reclaiming or claiming fag.
You mean women like Chase Strangio?
Like Chase Strangio, yeah. Chase Strangio has said, in the past that being called a fag like affirmed her identity because, okay, yeah, correct. I'm a guy, and it's just like so gross and feels like you don't want to be like, oh, I'm not going to get caught up in being like this victim, like, oh, I've been slurred and that's what everybody has thrown at me all my life. And so I want, I have to preserve that word because I attach some kind of victimhood claim to it. That's the kind of confusing thing about it. But, um, it's rude and it's impolite, and also what's really aggravating about it is just that it's so out of this world hypocritical, where in any other context this would be completely unacceptable, but you know uh co-opting, or whatever the word is, the gay and lesbian identity
Yeah.
is norm, and is okay.
I mean, you can't reclaim something that was never thrown at you. Like, it's ridiculous.
Well, I was going to say these are the kids that grew up with queer not as an insult. And there's a great scene in the movie with Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal. I don't remember the name of the movie.
Oh, that's a heartbreaking movie. What is that movie?
It's a heartbreaking movie. It's actually a fascinating movie. Will you Google it? Will you Google it, Ben?
Yes.
It's really fascinating because it's about a guy who sort of
All of Us Strangers.
All of Us Strangers. So his parents have died while he's young and he never had the chance to come out to them, and he falls in love with this younger man and eventually sort of gets to see his parents again in a certain way, and come out to them, and they're stuck in the 80s. I'm giving too much away. So they're terrifying for them to have a gay son, but they have this discussion, the young hot Irishman and the older hot Irishman.
Aren't they like this? I feel like they were like around the same age. Are you saying Andrew Scott's the old one and Paul Mescal's the young one?
Well, I think Andrew Scott, I said older, I didn't say old.
Oh, I
Isn't
thought you
Andrew
said old.
Scott
Okay,
in
I'm
his
sorry.
40s? I think one's in his 20s and one's in their 40s. I don't
Okay,
know.
sorry. Continue.
I love them both. No, they have this discussion about queer, and Andrew Scott says, well, when I was growing up, that was an invective hurled at me. And Paul Mescal says, oh no, like that's a term of endearment or pride, etc., which I find fascinating. And I wonder if fag is somewhat, does Chase Strangio enjoy being called a fag because it validates being passing or whatever as a male, being seen as a male, and because it fulfills the need, the self-hatred kind of need, like you are looking like I am a master of self-sabotage and can arrange for anyone to reject me. That's my specialty based on my childhood, of which there was a lot of that. So I wonder if it's like
it validates the victim that they're
it
identity that they're
validates
looking for.
It validates that I'm worthless and bad and people reject me. And
In this context, I don't think that was it. Perhaps on some level that could be it, but in the context that Chase Strangio was talking about it, and that I've is no. In this context, the one that I saw it, she was confronted by someone that was blocking their driveway or something, and she had asked him to move, and he called her a fag. Um, yeah, but I think there's something to that, Lisa. That's possibly Jules Gill Peterson, one of my favorite people in the world. I'm sure we all love this person on the panel. Jules Gill Peterson is a trans-identified professor at Hopkins who wrote,
but wasn't when they wrote the book.
right.
I
So
know.
Yeah.
what is it? Trans histories. What is it?
The histories of the transgender child.
The histories of the
I
transgender
have it
child.
somewhere too.
I have it on the shelf too.
Might be in
Yeah.
a different spot.
And he was like an English professor, not a history professor.
Well,
right?
I think
Really?
I'm not sure. I do think Jules is, I mean, at least he calls himself a historian. I think his doctorate too,
He
or
identifies as a historian.
or
Right,
whatever
he
it
also
is.
calls himself a
He
woman.
identifies-
Yeah.
His doctorate, I think, for Rutgers was called something like queer theory as kids play or children's play, something like that. He's talked about just a bunch of bogus stuff and rambles on and has that really florid, queer theory language. I mean, can spit those rhymes like no other. Like holds it down with Grace Lavery and that whole crew. And it is transfixing and so seducing to audiences. And they're like, oh my God, this is brilliant. My head's exploding. I'm going to transition, let's chop off my breast right now. And they're awful, awful. He's awful. And the New York Times give him space to write an op-ed saying that, ROGD is nothing but a right-wing, fantasy. This was a number of years ago. Now, mind you, Jules Peterson wrote this op-ed. I believe the New York Times allowed Jules to write this op-ed. I think it was published only a month after he had tweeted, something like give puberty blockers to children without parental consent, full
Yes.
stop, like period. Like this is what Jules Peterson advocates for, that all kids should just have access to puberty blockers without parental consent. And
family
interestingly,
abolition.
Jack Turbin commented and said, well, it's hard to argue with because they do that with birth control. So, which is kind of like what you're saying, Jamie, with this LD 380, just tagging it all on like, oh, kids get
Yeah.
birth control and SSRIs. So of course they should have access to cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers, right?
Well, you also don't give those to anybody at any time.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
Yeah, we read the histories of the transgender child for my book club on Substack, I think like 2 years ago. And I remember what impressed me was that like someone could write such long sentences while only typing with one hand.
why? What do you mean? Oh, sorry. Oh,
I just got that too. That was good. That was good, Eliza.
sex joke.
Yeah, find the
But,
book.
but if you're on estrogen, I don't know. Does that can okay? Well,
How
We
how
talked
many
about the
how many people are in your book club, Eliza?
it varies. Sometimes we have like probably like 8 to 15. It's probably
And
better when it's a little smaller.
and so
Um,
everybody read that from cover to cover. That's impressive to me.
I mean, some people skimmed
I
it.
mean,
Okay.
some people show up to book club and they haven't really read the whole book.
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
that's true. That's
Like
I
true.
read
every now and then I would hit something like he wrote the quote abstract whiteness of medicalized plasticity end quote, and then I might have had to skip like 5 pages until I could like come back to it again.
I read that when I was a true believer, and I found that book to be fascinating when I worked in a gender center.
It is fascinating.
I read it when I was, like still upholding the lies, but like desperately trying to figure out how not to. And I remember reading it. I read it right when it came out, which was like 2018, maybe.
Yeah.
And just being like, wait, your idea of a child is till 21,
Mhm.
which is different. And then noticing that the transgender child, much like the definition of trans now, kind of included everybody. And I thought, how can a historian so blatantly engage in presentism where you take a modern concept and impose it onto the past? I thought you weren't supposed to do that. And that person really advanced this narrative that trans children have always existed.
Yes.
As opposed to people who defy gendered, sex-based expectations have always existed. And we have different ways of understanding them, which would seem like the responsible way for an academic to.
Yeah, but you just answered your own question.
Well, you need two hands for that.
Yeah, there's that. There's also just I remember reading, and he'll talk about how kids need puberty blockers, and then he'll talk about trans people shouldn't have to take puberty blockers because they shouldn't have to please people with a cisnormative appearance, and it just made me think of that scene in Life of Brian with the beggar, where it's like there's just no pleasing some people. That's just what Jesus said, sir.
I'm looking at his CV, and Brave has generously generated one for me. Can I read you a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. Jules, I'm gonna read it as it is on the page. I'm not gonna change any of the words here. Jules Gill Peterson is a Canadian historian specializing in transgender history and the history of sexuality. She is an associate professor of history at Johns Hopkins University. Gill Peterson earned a bachelor's degree in history from the University of Ottawa in 2010 and received a PhD in American Studies from Rutgers University in 2015. I'm going to skip a bit. Gill Peterson is a general co-editor of Transgender Studies Quarterly, something that
We should
might
all
deserve
submit
a
our
whole episode at some point, and has held fellowships from the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study at Harvard University 2023 to 2024, the American Council of Learned Societies 2018 to 2019, and the Kinsey Institute 2015. She was honored with the Chancellor's Distinguished Research Award from the University of Pittsburgh in 2020.
Yeah, you get prizes for that.
Oh yeah, you get
Also-
all sorts of status for just shit.
Also, I remember the first time I heard Herm on the radio,
Herm.
being very struck by the voice and why is this person talking like that? Because it didn't sound like a man, didn't sound like a woman, didn't sound like a gay man, whatever that means. It was so affected, and I had never really heard that before. And it was so different from, someone who might be naturally gender nonconforming. It was so affected. And I just got this post, because I try to take in all these different perspectives, and sometimes I'm hoping that I'll change my mind, even, I need to be willing to pivot should new evidence emerge that says this actually is the best thing since sliced bread. And so I was reading a post about, the life-saving importance of voice therapy. And it is such an odd thing that you need training to sound like your authentic self.
Yeah.
I was writing this part of my book this week where it was like, okay, misconceptions that I had. And one of them was that like the Be Your Authentic Self movement, and then spending time on the forums, and it's like, okay, how do women sit and how do women hold their purses, and do men talk about their days, or is that too girly? And like, what if I'm like texting with too many emojis? Like, is that too feminine? Like all like just complete obsessive madness about something that's obviously very unnatural for many of these people.
Speaking of
Eliza, do you think that's why people are so hostile, because they know that it's an affectation and that makes them more defensive?
So hostile in what sense?
Is that why Ben sent around this article about our, we've talked before about the school board meeting that Ben and I spoke at, and the more than a year of really, really crazy protests at my kids' district because of a resolution that was passed to revisit school guidelines about trans athletes and include doctors, evolutionary biologists, female athletes, etc. That's all the resolution says. And for over a year, there have been these protests, singing and macarena-ing and disruptions and inability to let any nuance through. And then they, what did the article say that you sent us, Ben?
Marin has by disrupting the meetings, Maud Marin has, being the cause of these disruptions, has prevented the school council from tackling other important issues like children with disabilities or students with disabilities, et cetera, which could not be further. I mean, I've heard from Maud's on the night that we went to that, Maud was like, this is so frustrating. I want to be able to talk about math and academics and all of these other important issues that are important to me, that are important to all these New York parents. And every single time it gets completely hijacked by these activists who come in and do everything they can to cause chaos.
Yeah, to silence people, to make sure that no other opinions are heard. And then they are accusing Maud Marin, the woman who passed or brought forth this resolution, which was actually overwhelmingly passed, of being the disruptive one. And I guess that's what I mean, Eliza. Like, they're
Yeah.
lying. They're lying about so much, so they have to work so hard to cover it up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure all of it is lying, but I think maybe the most salient point is when you are trying to be something you're not, and maybe you're really trying to convince yourself, and maybe on some level you think that you are that thing or you really want to be that thing. Yeah, I think that's naturally going to put somebody in a defensive posture. Like if somebody tells me that I'm not a woman, I don't care because it's not something that's dependent on other people's perceptions. It's not something that I could do anything to change. And I think the feeling of being an imposter, faking it, all of those kinds of like sources of doubt and insecurity would make some people hold very rigidly to the identity. It would have to. Like, yeah.
I remember Jennifer Finney Boylan writing about that in the memoir, I guess the first memoir that he wrote, saying how, what is it? She's not there, right?
He's not there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And saying that when he first came out, he kind of like really went for it and was doing the vocal change, and how much he kind of freaked how uncomfortable people were, his friends and his family and so on. Now, he does not, attempt to do that. And maybe that stopped pretty early, but people were really, really thrown by that, and I can imagine.
Must have affected his son a bit.
Well, yeah. Is his son still identifying as trans? Do you know?
Last article I saw, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So you wanted to talk about coffee shops?
Before,
I need
right
Yeah,
before you do that, though.
before you have my therapy session, which I need your all
And I
help.
do. I want to do this, and I'm only going to do this if you think this might be interesting. But Corey had read something about Jules, and I was talking about Jules' fluid language. Now, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I signed on to a Stanford Gender Center talk panel called the Turf Industrial Complex, and
That's hilarious.
this featured Grace Lavery, Jules Gill Peterson, Marquise Bay. And then I transcribed it because I was like, and I never ended up writing about it, but can I read you a sample of something that Jules said here? And I mean, it goes on and on, but Jules says, and forgive me if I did not transcribe this exactly, but I believe that I did because I listened very carefully and used to transcribe and so on. I think that there's a way maybe to get at that by thinking more about how race figures into all of this and actually doesn't figure, but materializes institutions and stratifies who gets to live under what circumstances and who is left to die in our societies. Because that, to me, seems like part of the question of how a figure would have any sort of material purchase. And, the pandemic has obliterated my memory, so I won't remember who tweeted this, but I saw someone tweet, in the last week, something to the effect of, well, fighting TERFs has kind of always felt to me a little bit like a white trans issue. And I was thinking a lot about that because, I was trying to think about what that tweet was attempting to communicate, right? And I think that there's a sort of broader question about what systemic forms of the regulation of human life disproportionately impact trans people, right? And I was thinking about how, I did feel this sort of new form of siloing on social media where I had like this sort of trans clout, like thought producing folks largely on Twitter, like really trying to engage in some of these battles over the constitution of trans people's existence as a matter of free speech. But then like for me, it's like literally that's Twitter. And then my Instagram is all Black trans and trans people of color circulating mutual aid projects, GoFundMe's, getting people out of jail, getting people housing. And I was thinking like, I guess I've never seen the word TERF there. And part of the answer is of course that the Black trans woman and Black trans women that don't even register under the imaginary that TERFs operate on. They're not even like worthy enough to be harassed in that way because they're so devalued. Dot, 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 on and on and on and on and on. So this is how Jules weaves into the race and all of these things in the same time. Quote, it is at least since the 19th century the direct province of white women's feminism to pursue white supremacy. That is like the primary project of the American. And it seems also English white feminism in its dominant narrative mode, right? Is to pursue the cause of civilization, so-called, and to think about the regulation and reproduction of the race as white women's sort of duty. This is how,
Definitely.
yeah,
As a
It's
white
weird
woman,
how messed up women are that they just cause all of this pain.
Yeah.
White women, sorry.
it is. But what one rhetorical device that a lot of folks, and perhaps I do this, perhaps we do this, but I noticed this in academia for sure, Columbia and elsewhere, and specifically here, Jules does this. You insert right into
Right.
your speaking. People find themselves nodding along. It's so because you're doing something, your speech is impenetrable. It's going over a lot of people's heads. It's like Judith Butler. It's going over a lot of people's heads, and it seems like it's holding a mystery because it's so impenetrable, and that this is just above me, and this person holds the truth, and one day I'll be able to get there. I'll be able to grasp it. And by inserting right into it, you just find yourself, yes, yes, oh my gosh, yes. That was amazing. Oh my God, snap, snap, snaps. And then coming away being like, this person is brilliant. And then a month later, when they tweet puberty blockers should be given to children for free without parental consent, the end, you're
right?
like, oh God, there must be, right? There must be something to that because what Jules was saying is that the point of white, what was Jules saying? Something about how cis
Um,
heteronormativity is white supremacy, and that if I support, it's like it,
Thinking women are female is the ultimate whiteness.
right.
No idea.
Yes, well, that's a good one, Eliza. That's a really good distillation of what folks think.
Well,
It's
there's definitely no gender binary in societies of color. I mean, female genital mutilation,
Everybody gives birth.
no. Yeah, that's not happening in any,
Nobody knows when there will be a baby, where it would come from. That's not
yeah,
racist.
hmm.
right.
And if people
So
don't know what we're talking about there, we're saying, a lot of folks say that, the sex binary is a Western construct. That other cultures and other ways of knowing, contemplate, view, consider uh, gender differences or the differences between very, very differently, as if that we haven't all known that that it's almost like they're inhuman, like they're on some other, it's so bizarre, but that's the crux of it. It's like they think that they're being woke and anti-racist, and they're actually reinforcing the most primitivist, gross, racist, backwards viewpoint ever.
Yeah.
yes.
Jamie,
Ew,
Yes.
we've got like 15 minutes left. Let's
yes.
Okay.
have our mini
Can you
therapy session.
solve my coffee shop problem?
What's your
Okay.
coffee shop problem?
Stop writing Jamie Reed, whistleblower, and turf on. Stop asking them to write that on your coffee cups, and everything will be okay.
Okay. So I have to first admit that I have a coffee problem. Okay. So
I don't think you're ready for us to work through your coffee problem now. But keep going. Sorry.
I mean, do I go into how bad of a coffee problem I have? Is that relevant?
How much coffee do you drink every day?
I prefer to do 4 shots of espresso in the morning and then 3 to 4 in the afternoon.
How much of it do you make yourself?
Okay. Often none.
Okay.
That's expensive.
Do you have a
Okay.
coffee problem? Or let's just do a thought experiment here for a second.
We didn't even
Let's
get
just-
into
let's
the
just-
real problem yet.
Let's avoid the word coffee completely for a second, or espresso or anything related. What sort of problem do you have? But don't use the word the thing that you have the dependency on. Use a different description.
I'm not saying that I have a dependency issue on anything.
It's not the coffee
why
that's the
you're not
problem.
ready
It's
to
the
talk about
coffee
it.
shop.
The first
It's the
step is
coffee
that
shop. Thank you, Lisa. Okay. I
Okay.
also process caffeine. I process caffeine really quickly. I go to bed without a problem. I can put my head on the pillow at
All
9:30
junkie talk.
and just go to sleep. So it is not negatively affecting my life.
It
Or
is.
even
Your body is so strung out from taking so much caffeine that you wake up unrested, you need more coffee, but you end the day exhausted because you've burned yourself out.
And
I'm
I will and I will
Corey,
state
your
this.
your words are violence. Your words are
Yes.
violent. That's
Okay. Can I
violence.
Dare
also
to me.
you
just
say this about coffee?
I'm going to also state this. I have successfully weaned myself off of the prescription of omeprazole. So
What about-
clearly, I've no medical side effects to drinking 8 shots of espresso a day. Okay.
Whoa. Okay,
So
but that's not what we're talking about.
that's not the problem. So the other day I go to the coffee shop that I usually like to go to. And it is a national known coffee shop. It has a very well-known logo and a very well-known color scheme.
And
And I
really
ordered,
bad coffee?
okay, well, and I ordered my coffee
So
and
Dunkin' Donuts.
I no, and I go in to pick it up and there are 6 people working. Okay. 3 of them I know right away. One is a man identifying as a woman on estrogen, little boobies, and looks ill, is underweight, greasy hair, face, like just looks ill. Then there are 2 women who identify as men who look also ill, but in a different way. So they are overweight, very short, also look ill. And I had this like, oh shit moment where I realized, what am I doing? Am I just like am I contributing to these individuals' early death? And also
and also maybe your own early. No, sorry.
why
You
are
mean
all
they worked there because
Yes.
they worked there and you think that their health insurance is covering their transition?
Yes,
And if
that's what I
you
think.
if you buy coffee there, you
Yes.
are supporting transition.
So then I decide after I make this tweet that had like way too many views because now I feel like I've stuck myself in a hole where I can't go there anymore because I made a public announcement. So now I can only go to local little coffee shops. So I do that and I am in where was I at? Michigan. I'm in Michigan. And I go to the local little coffee shop, and there are 3 employees, and guess how many are trans identified and all of them.
Okay.
And I hear one of those employees say, and it was so I'm gonna pull the exact quote from what they said. He who identifies as she says to his 2 other coworkers who are he's that identify as she's, I'm sorry I was late today. My wife and my other wife and my girlfriend and my goblin were really having issues, and I had to deal with all of them.
My goblin?
My wife, my other wife, my girlfriend, and my goblin.
So it sounds like the police there are going to find 4 bodies in the house.
My face.
I mean, it sounds like this was probably imaginary.
No,
But
in Michigan for a whole day, and I needed 4 shots of espresso in the morning over ice, which I went and got. And then I had no other place to go except to back there to get my 4 shots of espresso in the afternoon. So please, somebody tell me, what am I supposed to do? Can we just no longer go to coffee shops? And also, people were trying to claim after my Twitter post that I was calling for a boycott, which I don't think I am. But what is happening in the world?
No, I mean it's good to have awareness about because the reality is that there are certain coffee conglomerates that do, I believe, at last I heard, fund or provide health insurance and where
Yeah.
these services are covered. In fact, I remember kind of it being almost like an advertising, or at least where did I even hear that? I mean, it was like an advertising, or kind of like, hey, come work for us because
Yeah, like
you can
the
be trans and you can transition here.
like the most expensive employee recruitment drive of all time.
Right.
Um,
Corey,
okay.
the thing about the numbers fallacy, I forget what it was called.
Yeah,
That
it's the availability heuristic or availability bias.
can you explain that?
Yeah, so I think Jamie's been in so many coffee shops in the last 2 days that they all start to blur together. And when you see something that really sticks out, you remember it. And when you don't see something that sticks out, it just sort of blurs all together. So if Jamie's been in 15 coffee shops this week, and 2 of them had a bunch of trans identified employees, and 13 of them didn't, the 2 that she ran into are going to be a lot more like, here's that thing that I'm always talking. All these coffee shops are full of them. I hope I'm explaining it correctly.
Continue.
I mean, that's what she tunes into. I have to say though that it seems like a lot of the coffee shops I go to, I mean, have trans employees. I went to one in which is fine. I mean, totally fine with me. But I went to one in Austin, and the barista was wearing a Protect Trans Kids t-shirt.
The one
And
with the knife.
yeah, with the knife, like, which is a real, I guess, by killing anyone who wants to interrogate the claims of gender affirming care. But I just said, I like your t-shirt. Where'd you get it? And I wish I could be like that more often. That's different than Jamie's kind of ethical dilemma about not wanting to support a business that pays for employees to transition.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do want to clarify something. That t-shirt that you're talking about that has describe it again.
It says protect trans kids in like cursive writing and has a knife, I think.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. That's actually the surgical implement that Dr. Gallagher uses on her female patients.
This is the surgeon who kind of advertised to minors and young people by saying, I'm going to yeet the teats. And then there were several complaints brought against her. She was featured on I Am Jazz. And apparently, yeah, there's a... Anyway.
I don't use the word evil very often, although I'm using it more lightly. I would describe her as evil.
Yeah,
she's in Florida, right? In Florida?
I don't know where she is now. She had to leave Florida, I think, didn't she?
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know where she is either. I know she doesn't carry malpractice insurance because then it's not profitable to sue her when she hurts her patients. Yeah, so I have a very similar dilemma because the thrift store that I would otherwise go, that I once went to, and then I realized that this was happening, also funds transition.
And are all the employees trans also there?
Yeah. Yeah. And so like the one time that I what?
I mean, do you go?
No, now I can't go anymore. But like the one time that I was there when I was at the register, and it was like, oh my God, is it funding this? And there was like a trans cashier, and they were like, do you want to round up by 10 cents to like fund the, and I was like, you feel like a real asshole to say no?
To fund my double mastectomy, or what are they?
Well, it was a man, but it was just like, do you want to round up by 10 cents? And it was like,
to fund what? Do you remember what he was saying specifically?
It was to fund this trans healthcare clinic.
Okay.
So now I can't go there. Now I can't go thrift shopping anymore.
I can understand that. I mean, that's
can I play devil's
specifically
advocate?
raising funds for a trans health clinic. That's one thing. I mean, I wouldn't be able to patronize a place like that either. But with Jamie's dilemma, when, with you, Jamie, I think there's so many like where you could just get so lost in that, in my opinion, like avoiding all these, it kind of never ends because it doesn't even have to do with trans healthcare. You can be like, oh, well, this person is exploiting this and
There's
then this person, but I mean,
I know. I mean, is there some element? This is me trying to talk out of myself out of my anti-green place with the mermaid tweet.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Is there some element where if you support it, then maybe it's good because these young people are getting out of the house and they have a job?
Well, Ben and I pay very high New York City taxes. You pay extra taxes in New York City that fund the DOE that teaches this crappy stuff to children.
Right.
I mean, we can vote with our dollars, but
you would have to leave New York.
I do have a suggestion for you, which is a portable espresso machine that tiny little travel espresso, and you take it with you with a much better quality of coffee. Because
Well, I have one at home
most
now.
offensive thing that in the
See,
world.
look, and I'm drinking out. I'm a good liberal. I'm drinking out of my recycled glass jar.
Mhm.
I mean, I made the coffee at home now.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate. First of all, I fully support your coffee addiction. I relate. I drink coffee all day as well. So you are seen, you are heard. I feel you. I'm with you.
Okay.
Two, I say live it up, go to those coffee shops. Who cares? That's just me. Listeners might disagree. You all might be like, you're a horrible person, but you're doing the work. You're doing as much as you can. You're not Mother Teresa. You're not a saint. And, enjoy your coffee. Be kind to those poor kids and try to amend things so that big conglomerates aren't funding trans surgeries for minors and so on.
And they probably won't be soon anyway because
Right.
the insurance won't cover it. And
yeah.
Well, maybe listeners/viewers could weigh in about like ethical dollar spending.
Or if you can tell me what are some of the other big chains that don't, maybe that would help me. That's not yeah.
Like,
Maybe
what's the
somebody-
Chick-fil-A equivalent?
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Yeah, I love Chick-fil-A. Just
How's
for the
their
record.
coffee?
I don't know.
Espresso.
Lobby, lobby.
In addition to my caffeine, so it's the 4 shots espresso, then I would love a large iced tea from Chick-fil-A and then 4 more shots of espresso. So
Okay, this is actually, I've always wondered, how can Jamie do all this? But actually, we've answered a lot of questions today.
yep, there we go.
That's how she makes her life work.
Yeah.
Who needs speed when you have caffeine?
Yeah.
All right. Should we
All right,
do
I gotta-
our should we do our
Do your thing.
our non-gender recommendations of the week besides Chick-fil-A iced tea?
Yes.
No gay marriage iced tea? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what they're famous for? Being against gay marriage?
At one time they were, I believe, yeah.
And now they're just famous for a good chicken
Yeah.
tick.
I think that was an HRC campaign against Chick-fil-A, if I recall.
Mm.
I fell for it. Now I
Me
eat
too.
Chick-fil-A all the time.
Yeah.
Me too.
Okay, so things
They
of
have
the
good waffle fries.
Yes, they do.
good what?
Waffle
Waffle
fries.
fries.
Oh,
And mac and cheese and kale crunch salad. Okay, there's my thing for the week. You can move on. Chick-fil-A.
Yeah,
Chick-fil-A.
kale crunch salad at Chick-fil-A.
Yes, it's so good. Yes. Okay, that's
World-
mine. All right, who's
The
up?
world really is upside down. Okay,
um,
my
okay.
non-gender recommendation of the week is Megan Dom or Down
mhm.
on something called the Rushfield Lunch, which is Richard Rushfield's Substack. And Richard Rushfield hired me in college to make a documentary about him, by the way.
a Marxist feminist documentary.
Well, our college didn't have you in the beginning. There was no set amount of time you were supposed to go there. People would be there 5, 6 years, whatever, and then they started to want you to leave. And as a form of protest or something, Richard decided he would host something called Senior Day. We also didn't, because it was not expected that you would finish in 4 years. We didn't have freshman, sophomore, junior, etc. So he invented Senior Day, and I didn't realize that how hilarious it was until recently. But I followed him around with a video camera in 1992. But all these years later, he interviewed my writing hero, Megan Dom, and it was really funny. I listened to it while driving around in LA, and I loved it.
I'll have to check that out.
Who's next?
Eliza, what about you? You got anything?
I think it's mostly sold out, but if you can possibly get a ticket, go and see Max Richter's world tour. It's amazing. I went to see it in Chicago this week, and it was really, really, really good.
Is this a comedy show?
No.
Who's Max Richter? I don't know who that
No,
is.
Max Richter. So he's a composer,
Oh,
and I do probably like
I'm not
75
sophisticated, Eliza. I'm sorry, okay?
I do like 75% of my writing to his music, and so
Yeah,
I'm
we
sitting
like
there and I'm kind of
Chick-fil-A.
feeling like I should be writing. What?
We like Chick-fil-A. You got to bring it down to our level.
You mean if I put on Max Richter while writing, my sentences will come out beautiful like yours? Should I
Yeah,
try
that's
that?
the secret.
That's
I like to work in
Eliza's
coffee
secret.
shops. I like to work in coffee shops though.
Yeah.
So I
Corey,
don't
what
know.
about you? What's your non-gender thing?
Well, I have to admit something to you all, which is that I have something of a coffee problem. Um, when I go into the office, the coffee that they serve is basically they have really nice coffee at the building next door. We get their used grounds, and that's what we make our coffee out of.
Get out of town. You're
It's
lying.
like-
Well, it tastes that way at least.
It tastes that way. Okay. Oh my God.
Although I might be exaggerating because I think the seconds from premium grounds would probably still taste better than what we got.
Oh God.
So what's your recommendation then? You
Well,
have
well, I
Recommendation
over
is
the
we all
winter.
quit our jobs.
over the winter I acquired a device called an AeroPress. Now, if you've ever made French press coffee, it's French press coffee. If it's made well, can be quite delicious. And the AeroPress is a bit like a French press that has a slightly different mechanic to it that makes it very, very easy to clean up. So if you know the principle, like when you put your thumb over a straw and you can like lift the water out of your cup because the difference in pressure there. The AeroPress works on a similar mechanic. So you put your filter, you put your grounds in, you put your hot water in, and then you put this little thing that stops the water from coming out, and you wait for about 2 minutes, and then you press all the way down, and it pushes all the water out, makes a little hissing sound as last bit of air pushes all the way through the grounds, and you have as long as you have good coffee, because that's really the major problem that's missing in this equation here. You bring in good coffee, you can make good coffee in the office. It makes being in the office much more tolerable.
Yeah.
AeroPress by the
I'm
man who brought you the flying disc.
Okay, Ben.
Well, we're on the coffee thing. So I was gonna mention Anne Hersey Lee's book. What was it? Infidel. I'm reading right now.
Yeah.
Very good. But I'm almost finished. It's amazing. And it's really weird because the arc is like I've related so much after writing a book myself about going back to school and kind of rediscovering the value of like the West and Ayan leaves Somalia and Kenya and all these war-torn places and ends up in Holland and goes to these, Dutch schools. And after she gets her Dutch citizenship passed, she comes back to her house there with all her friends and she's like, "I'm Dutch." And they all just look at her like, "Okay, who cares?" Like they're all like, "Who cares? It's not a big deal." Like, it was nationalism was seen as like a form of racism, she wrote. Like there was this idea like it's not special. Anyway, and they had no idea what they were able to enjoy. Um,
Ah.
but Nespresso, I love Nespresso machines. I tweeted a while ago that Nespresso is like the best. They have the virtual coffee. I mean, it's still every cup of coffee is delicious. It comes out with like this foamy cream on top. It's
I have
amazing.
one. I have an espresso machine.
Do you have one that has that for just the? Is it the virtual? Does it make coffee as well, or does it just make espresso?
I mean, I only make espresso in it and it has perfect crema.
Okay, so yeah, I have the virtual line. I love it. So it makes both espresso and it
Yeah.
makes cups of coffee. And I tweeted once that this is like the way, and people were like, "Well, you stupid Americans, you don't know coffee." Actually, Julia Mason, shout out to Julia Mason if you're listening, who I actually thought of recently because I had an Americano. Julia was like, "No, you're wrong. The correct way to drink coffee is you make espresso and you put hot water in it and cream or sugar if you want any cream or sugar or whatever, but that's how you drink that's how you're supposed to drink coffee is Americano. You put espresso and then put hot water in." I had an Americano this past weekend with a friend and I thought of Julia Mason. Shout out to her. Who was quoted in the Economist article,
Yes,
actually.
she was. She was.
Yes,
About
about
the
why.
Yep.
Yeah, how the Trump has science on its side when it comes to gender affirming care.
Yeah. The end quote was basically like, if you have a problem with the report, you probably didn't read it.
Yes.
Which I was like, yep, there you go.
Love her.
Love her too.
Uh,
All right, friends, I'm so glad I got to be back this week. I missed you all very much.
Missed you
we
too.
missed
So
you.
welcome back.
I missed all of you in the last week.
All right. Well, next week.
All right.
Adieu.
Thank you for listening, everyone. Take care. Have a great week.